This is Talk is Sheep, the official podcast of the Wild Sheep Society BC, brought to you by Sitka Game. Come along as we bring conversations that matter to you into the high alpine.
Regardless of how it ends, this is going to be 100% funded by Dall Sheep Foundation and our chapters and affiliates. So what do we have? $10,000 from Idaho Dall Sheep Foundation. We have someone scratching this money, or we got a thief who's got on it. Okay, so $10,000 for Idaho Dall Sheep Foundation. $5,000 from the Montana Wild Sheep Foundation.
Midwest chapter for $25,000.
$25,000. $10,000 from TBS in Texas. $10,000. $5,000 from Arizona Desert Bighorn. I'm not going too fast here. Washington Wild Sheep Foundation, $10,000. Alberta, Wild Sheep Foundation of Alberta, our host of our summit next year, $10,000. We know you're going to make it happen. $10,000 from the fraternity of Desert Bighorn Sheep. Wild Sheep Society of British Columbia, $70,000 Canadian, $50,000 US. Anyone else? Iowa Frogs, $15,000.
Well, my friend, that is how you raise 274,000 US dollars in a matter of, 7 minutes?
Yeah, it's incredible. You know, it doesn't quite come over the audio like it was in the room, but man, was that a powerful place to be. It just kept going, like 7 minutes, like you say, of bam, 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 everybody throwing money at it. It was pretty awesome to be a part of.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, Talk is Sheep. We're joined by Krystal Kriss from the Skeena region. For those of you that don't know where that is, that's the northwest part of British Columbia. Region 6, it's known as. She's the regional biologist up there. And there's a Dall Sheep project that's being spearheaded. Krystal's the lead on that, working with the Yukon government. And we're studying Dall Sheep. And it's a cross-border project in conjunction with the Carcross First Nations, and just a fantastic project. And what happened was Greg and I were just down at Chapter and Affiliate Summit in Rapid City, South Dakota. And Greg, give the high level on the fundraising that went on there.
Well, the chair of the Wild Sheep Foundation, Glenn Landris, there, he opened up, gave a little touch base on the Carcross project, and then just put a call out to every chapter and affiliate that was in the room asking for funds, and everyone delivered. The chapters and affiliates delivered, individuals in the room delivered, and it just kept, the counter kept going up, and we ended at $274,000 US, which funds the entire project and gives a little bit of extra to broaden the horizon of that project.
So super cool. Dall Sheeps are severely understudied in British Columbia. And that was one of the things that our project chair, Chris Barker, Vice President of the Wild Sheep Society BC, had reached out and to the, in Region 6, talked to Krystal and Bill Jex, the provincial wild sheep mountain goat specialist, and approached them about doing a Dall Sheep project. And this just multi-jurisdictional at its finest. So we got BC involved, we've got Yukon involved, we've got the Carcross First Nations, and then this is going to be fully funded by the Wild Sheep Foundation and its chapter and affiliate family to the tune of 274,000 US dollars. And it just shows the strength and power. It's interesting, Greg, you reached out to me this morning and said, hey, can I share that graphic, or should we share that graphic from the Wild Sheep Foundation that talks about how much money gets spent back in BC here? And, you know, we've been questioned before. We sponsored a stone sheep replica, a sculpture at the Wild Sheep Foundation headquarters. It's got our plaque, which is great awareness, right? People come from all over the world to see the Wild Sheep Foundation. I think we contributed $2,500 towards that back in the day. This was 7-8 years ago. And it's got our logo on it. It's very cool. People see a stone sheep, they see our logo on it. We supported it. We got questioned on that, and rightfully so. Our members are donating their hard-earned money. They're supporting us. But the one thing about our chapter and affiliate network is sometimes we send money down south. We've supported projects. The Fraternity of the Desert Bighorn, we sent money down there for a water haul a couple of years ago. Last year, we sent some money down to, was it Nebraska? So there's support that money goes out. But then a project here in British Columbia sees $274,000 US come back, support by the Wild Sheep Foundation family. So, Gray Thornton, President CEO of the Wild Sheep Foundation, talks about one tent, one campfire, and how we work together. Yes, 99.9% of our money stays here in British Columbia that we raise, that our members raise, and our mission is looking after BC's wild sheep. But there's a lot of collaboration that goes on, and sheep know no borders, right? Those sheep that are in the Yukon, they don't know, where the BC border is. The bighorns that are down in the southeast corner of BC, they don't know what's Montana. They don't know what's Alberta. They don't know. So, I love the concept. It's amazing, and it's phenomenal the support we get as in here in British Columbia. We're very, very, very privileged and lucky to get the support we do.
Well, yeah, and that, the graphic you spoke about, we shared it to social media, and it speaks volumes for the Wild Sheep Foundation. 6,200,000, almost 6.3 million they've sent back to us, and it's probably now, after chapters and affiliates, 6.3 million that they've given us. And Midwest was hosting, and that they're a big time supporter of ours, and they've given us over 200,000 US as well. And that, they shared that graphic, and many other chapters and affiliates have stepped up, and that money comes right back into BC. And that's why we don't shy away from sharing funds when called upon with the other chapters and affiliates, because when we need it, they've been there for us.
And that's the one thing is, it's important that we are there for each other, because, there might be the die-off. There might be, something that we can do collectively to support wild sheep. And we're going to be there for our brothers and sisters in other states and provinces. And it truly is one tent, one campfire. I really feel that it's the strength of the Wild Sheep Foundation family. We're an affiliate of the Wild Sheep Foundation. We're independent, but we also still subscribe to working together for wild sheep across all borders. Pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Nailed it with that. What happened on Saturday evening there? You might have been a draw for a rifle, or some sort of raffle happened?
Yeah, super cool. So, we've got our 6-gun super raffle. Thank you to our listeners and our supporters, all of you that have stepped up and contributed by buying tickets. And again, those funds support our mission. Those go direct back onto the ground to support wild sheep conservation. That $50,000 US that we contributed to that Dall Sheep project, that comes from our gaming account. We write a check out of our gaming for those callers to support that project. So, when you buy those raffle tickets, you get a really cool opportunity to win 6 very cool rifles. And yeah, you're right. We drew the early bird winner on Saturday night up in Comox, and we gave away about a $6,000 rifle to a lucky winner in Kelowna, and super cool. But there's still 5 more rifles to give away. We're still selling tickets, and I'd absolutely be remiss if I didn't do a huge shout out to Precision Optics and our industry partners that have made this possible. So $54,000 in prizes, fully donated, ladies and gentlemen, fully donated. This is an unbelievable donation. And our goal is to raise, we'd love to raise $225,000, and that money will support our conservation initiatives. And we're over halfway there. Thank you to the incredible support of our members and those that want a chance at some wicked rifles. 6 crazy rifles, and there's still 5 left. So if you think, oh, I missed the early bird, yeah, you missed the early bird, but there's still almost 50 grand worth of prizes to be won. So don't give up yet. We're drawing those September 9th here in Victoria. We're hoping to put together a pub night, get together, have some beverages, tell some sheep stories. Some of you will be back from the mountains by then, and we can talk about our fall, and we'll give away 5 really cool rifles.
That sounds like a good way to end sheep season, giving away a few rifles.
Yeah, just 5. We're just going to give 5 away. But the thing is they're premium firearms, man. Like Gunworks is the number one rifle. We got a 6.5 PRC climber, I think it is. That's the grand prize. It's unbelievable. I can't even tell you the details because there's so many rifles and so many. You start spinning. But again, Precision Optics stepping up to the plate. They put this package together for us, obviously with the support of a number of manufacturers and optics companies as well, doing their part. But phenomenal. So
perfect time to end, I think. Let's roll into this one with Krystal Kriss.
Awesome, brother. Enjoy.
This episode is sponsored by our conservation partner, Stone Glacier. Thank you, Sitka Gear and Stone Glacier, for investing in healthy wildlife and sustainable ecosystems.
Awesome, Krystal. Well, welcome to the podcast. It's great to see you. Looks like you're in a pretty official place. I'm guessing that's the government office is that in Smithers or where you at?
You bet. I'm actually sitting in Conrad's office. I have a cube and it doesn't, wade well for these kind of calls. So yeah, in the closed door in Conrad's office at work. Yeah.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, you're doing the heavy lifting there in Region 6. So if it was up to me, you'd have the big office and everybody else would be in the cube. But anyway, I'm not going to get into the office politics on that one. So how's things going with you today?
Really good. Yeah. Things are really busy, work-wise and personal life-wise. So, but everything's great. So, yeah.
Right on. So anyway, we're really excited to have you on the podcast. And so for our listeners, let's just kind of do a high level 25,000 feet. Who's Krystal Kriss and kind of background, who brought you, how you got here. And let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, you bet. You said my name's Krystal Kriss. So I've been working as a regional wildlife biologist in the Skeena region since 2012. I kind of started out when I first came here supporting the mountain goat file. And then when I guess my mentor and colleague, Bill Jack, stepped into his provincial role, that kind of left the sheep file gap. So I've, since he stepped into that provincial role, I've taken over both the sheep and goat file. So that's been awesome, kind of a dream of mine. So it's great. I guess a bit more background about myself. I grew up in Fort Nelson, which is a pretty, outdoor-oriented northern community. Although I would say like my immediate family weren't really into the outdoors or hunting or anything like that. Growing up there, I think, to be totally honest, I felt pretty lost my whole life until I got my driver's license and could start accessing those northern Rockies and hiking. And, I remember thinking back to one of my first backpacking trips. I was 18, fresh out of graduating high school, and did the walk past trail with a girlfriend. And I remember seeing a deadhead ram, and kind of, I think that was the start of it. It kind of inspired a curiosity, and eventually led me to my studies, my undergrad and master's research with wildlife. And that kind of brought me to where I am here a bit. Yeah.
Very cool. So you grew up in your family wasn't hunters. They weren't much into the outdoors sort of side of stuff.
Yeah, that's correct. I always kind of had an interest, just didn't have the opportunity growing up. Kind of always wondered how I could get the opportunity. Reached out to a few of like uncles and things like that I knew that hunted. But I mean, I appreciate they had their trips planned. Didn't want to take the time to get me out at that point. But I will say, I always had the interest through my work. I've been so lucky to make some tremendous friends and mentors that actually did take me out, and so thankful for them. I've now been lucky enough to harvest a few animals. Including the last one was an 11-year-old stones with my husband Dan by my side and really good friend Craig, and that's just a lifelong dream. So yeah, I would say
that's really.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, go ahead. Awesome. Please.
I was just going to say I've taken a little bit of a hiatus. I had an injury from a car accident and 2 kids. So that phase of life doesn't really allow for a lot of mountain time, but I'm still really hungry for it and looking forward to getting back in the hills. And then, I guess it's just going to look a little different now that I'm the sheep lead for Skeena. I personally wouldn't be comfortable hunting in this area, so I'll be looking to go probably to the Peace region. So, yeah, yeah.
Awesome. So that's such a cool perspective. And, we see a lot of people that we deal with in government now that maybe don't have the connection to wildlife that you do. And quite often they don't hunt. And it doesn't mean that they don't care about wildlife. They're just not as, I guess, and certainly as a consumptive user, we don't see a lot of that. So I'm curious with your journey, did you get, obviously you had the interest in the outdoors, but did you get into the hunting first, or was it through your work in the field and then it evolved? Talk about that process there for us.
Yeah, no, for sure. I guess, through university, so my undergrad university, that was kind of, you're becoming an adult, stepping out in the world. So I took my core and my PAL and I tried to just meet individuals. So started out with just, the grouse hunting kind of through that, and wanted to pursue my interest. So I just started to try. Once I ended up landing this position, got here, and there's just tremendous people. Like my coworkers, Bill, Jex, and Conrad. I was able to get out with them, and I think just that helps to build confidence. And so you kind of go, from thinking you can only grouse hunt to then all of a sudden you harvested a black bear, and then all of a sudden, I just went on a mountain goat hunt and harvested a goat, and so it's just tremendous opportunity. And then the other thing I would say is, my husband, obviously, he's a huge avid fisherman and a hunter. So we kind of share that passion now. And so we just help build that into our family. And, even last year, my daughter, she's now 18 months and my son's now 4. So this is last year. They were even littler. We had them out, and my husband shot a deer, and we had to deal with all that all together. And then my son actually helped, ground all of the meat up from that. And so it's incredible to get them involved. And after that, I remember we were down south at Dan's folks' house. They live in White Rock, and, we're having a chicken dinner, and, my son asks Grammy, like, Grammy, did you kill this chicken? And, it was bought from the store, but I love that he realizes that meat comes from a life, so yeah.
Yeah, that's super cool. I wish more of our kids were exposed to that.
Yeah.
And does your son, does he like wild meat or prefer that to domestic meat, or how does that work?
Yeah, I would say his favorite is like Chinook salmon, saltwater salmon.
Wow.
You can't complain about that. And then and the deer, it's really good. So he often says like, "Oh, we're gonna have deer sauce for dinner," and yeah, we're gonna have deer sauce tonight. And yeah, so it's pretty cool. Yeah.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to jump into your stone sheep hunt because we have to talk. This is Talk of Sheep, so we have to talk about that. But before we do, let's talk business. So interesting enough tonight. Well, first of all, we got to meet you. I guess officially, we'd known you a little bit prior to, but the summit in Prince George was kind of our first opportunity to connect and really get to know you a little bit better. And I think you were off on maternity leave right prior to that. Is that correct?
Yep, that's right.
Krystal, or what?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, and then also we've recently been working on a new project with you, and we're going to do this podcast tonight, but we've moved it up so that you could make that project call tonight. So maybe just talk a little bit about the high level stuff in Region 6, kind of things that you're working on. And then I want to talk about that project that we're working with you on, because it's pretty inspiring that we're really excited about it. So.
Yeah, you bet. So, high level, we've actually got a tremendous amount of sheep work going on in the region, and this winter is going to be very busy. But yeah, so, various projects. So one thing that I would kind of caveat is like, the province has a really strong commitment to reconciliation with First Nations. And so we're starting to do more work with the nations, which is fantastic. And so one of those projects is working collaboratively with the Taku River Tlingit. So we've got like a research project kind of going on in Atlan East on there. And so basically looking to identify migration patterns just to figure out if, they were talking about essentially raising a dam water. So just wanting to make sure that wouldn't impede the migration routes. So that's one thing going on. We've got some inventories about to happen. Next week, myself, I guess 2 weeks from now, myself and Bill Jex are heading up to Spatsizi to do an inventory. At the same time as that, my other coworker, Samantha, she's going to be serving at Ziza, and then for goats as well, in the Stikine Canyon and kind of the Stikine East, so north of the Spatsizi towards the Pittman Range. So we're starting to get some of those gaps filled, which is fantastic. The other big project that's kind of kicking off, which is, largely thankful, I guess I should say thanks to, a donor. The guide outfitter donated a hunt at the sheep show down in Reno. Tremendous. The funds from that essentially are allowing us to do a research project in Spatsizi. So 40 collars are expected to go out this winter. We'll determine the actual collar numbers once we get that updated inventory done. So lots of research, lots of baseline health sampling going on, and then that leads us to the Carcross project as well. That's just kicking off.
Very cool. So a little bit high level again, why so much sheep work? Is this just something that's been kind of in the works? And I've always been curious about region. Is it the regional manager that's setting those goals for the region and what they're going to work on, or is it kind of who dictates that from a management perspective, Krystal?
I think it's always been pretty important. Like, Bill Jacks led the goat and sheep file. I came on in 2012, took over the goat file. Now lead both. It's always been really important. I think the issue is you only have so much capacity, and there's been so much work done with moose and caribou. And then just as we build capacity, we have I guess a few more permanent staff now. And then the other thing is our nations, like our northern nations, like sheep are very culturally significant to them. And so through building that relationship and working more with nations, it's become identified as a kind of a shared priority. So with that just comes more funding opportunity and more capacity to actually do some of the work together. So, yeah.
So would you say that's kind of driving some of the stuff going on now? I know too, you talked about the funding that came in through the Wild Sheep Foundation, one of the guide outfitters that donated the stone sheep hunt. I think that was Mike Gilson, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that, I think that's the highest grossing stone sheep that's ever sold, stone sheep hunt that's ever sold at auction. It was 135,000 US or something.
Yeah. Some, I can't remember the amount, but it was incredible. And then we had an anonymous donation on top of that. So it's like, wow. Yeah.
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 Very cool.
Yeah.
So is that kind of driving some of this stuff now, like because there's money there and people are showing up with money for projects and driving things? Is that part of what's happening?
That's probably part of it. The other part of it too was some of the recent genetic work that's come out. Sim and others that kind of determined that essentially the world population of stone sheep exists within BC. There's kind of 100 in the Yukon span there, but that brings like a global responsibility for really sound management. And on top of that, with the work with the nations, we have a constitutionally driven, mandate to ensure that we manage those effectively. So I think there's just all those things are starting to come together creating the perfect storm where we're working together with, non-government organizations, the Wild Sheep Foundation, Wild Sheep Society BC, guide outfitters like the Tahltan Nation, the Taka River Tlingit, and then recognizing this global responsibility. It's just all colliding to allow all this work to happen. And also, I would say management support. Like I've kind of briefed my management on all these projects, and they're giving me the thumbs up, which is awesome. And so we'll just keep going and try to get all this work and fill all these gaps that we can to ensure that we have wild sheep populations thriving. Yeah.
Well, there's two things that are really exciting for me, and one is when I see a regional manager that's really, pursuing the stuff that we're interested in, and we know there's limited resources, limited money, and so we see someone like you, or we work with Chris Proctor in Region 3, for example, and we're just really moving the needle for wild sheep. It's really, really inspiring to see that, and it's neat to see that there's a priority on wild sheep.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The other thing that I think is interesting too is, there's, I guess, there tends to be some angst around reconciliation. I hear that occasionally from people that, the sort of what does the new normal look like? But that's the one cool thing right now is we're seeing First Nations driving these projects is really exciting. So, there's some really, really positive things coming out of this that we're seeing. We're having nations approach us and saying, hey, we want to do this project. And obviously you guys too. So it's really inspiring from that perspective.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I get it. I find change scary, and I'm a resident hunter as well, right? So it's like, oh, what opportunities are going to be around? But I mean, the beauty thing is I think we all have the same objectives, and sometimes focusing on those shared objectives. Yeah, it's incredible when you get a group, like just a bunch of folks together, working together. That kind of brings a good segue into the Carcross project. Like, it's incredible when you get these multi-jurisdictions working together. So, yeah.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about that. And I guess from a Wild Sheep Study BC perspective, Greg and I can just fill in a little bit of the gaps. Actually, why don't you talk about the project and then we'll talk about the funding end of things, but talk about this, the evolution of it. I think Chris maybe reached out to you and started the dialogue on the project itself.
Yeah.
Talk about the evolution of the project and what's involved, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess very early conversations, like you said, started with Chris, the Wild Sheep Society of BC, and Bill Jacks. They then looped myself in as the regional sheep lead, as well as Kyle Russell in the Yukon. So he's currently the acting sheep and goat specialist, while their permanent sheep and goat lady is on maternity leave at the moment. So we started having some, planning calls. But the first major thing, speaking of First Nations, was we wanted to ensure that we had support from the overlapping nations, which would be the Carcross Tagish First Nations. So I presented to their land management board, and we were just hopeful that we'd have their support, and we ended up getting that support, and then that kind of led into the project. And, if we kind of actually step back, going back to the Sheep Summit as well, back in November in Prince George there, one of the things that came out of there from the Skeena breakout group was, recognizing the need for herd planning. So, when you consider we currently have 25 herds that, how we define them at this point in Skeena region. So it's like, wow, where do we start for a project? And so, I guess I should also say at the same time, in the area of 628, we've unfortunately had to reduce some of the licensed harvesting opportunity. And that's just because we received information on, some higher traditional harvest occurring by the nation there, or potential harvesting. So we just wanted to take a conservative approach. And so now, recognizing that, okay, we want to do herd planning. We've got this area where we've, had to reduce licensed harvest opportunity. We know that these sheep in this area are transboundary. Why don't we do a research project together and all work together? And then we get the information, we get those knowledge gaps, and then we can have we can work on that herd planning, get that, the kind of the shared visions and goals, and then plan accordingly all together. So yeah, that's kind of like the high level evolution of where we're at now with it all. So yeah.
So, Krystal, it seems like this is the wrong word, but it seems like those northern Dall sheep get a little bit neglected, right? It doesn't seem to be a lot of activity around projects in that area. I think of, stone sheep projects in 6, 7B, 7A, and that's something front of mind for us too. We didn't apply for any Wild Sheep Foundation funding for anything in 6 actually last year, and it was front of mind. We were looking for a good project, trying to work with Bill. You'd been off, so we hadn't had a great dialogue there. So it's really inspiring. Now, have you guys done much in 6 with Dall sheep work at all in that northwest corner?
Apart from inventory, I guess just before I went on mat leave, so this would have been July 2021, we inventoried the Tatanchini, so all of 629 for goat and sheep, and just a small portion of 628, but we ran into weather there. So last year when I was off, my colleague Samantha was able to get out with Mike Bridger as well, and get out, and they inventoried 628, and then part of 627 as well, the 627A LEH zone. So apart from inventory, and that's it. We've taken a couple swabs, during the compulsory inspection process, but that's it. So we have a big gap. So yeah.
Yeah, that's the cool part about this. I'm excited about it. And I also think, we've done so many Kelly projects and so many Bighorn Rocky projects and so many stone projects. There were just not much for Dall. So from a historical perspective, have you guys seen much fluctuation in inventory, or has it been pretty consistent?
So my colleague is just wrapping up that report from the 628 survey, which happened, but we kind of just sat down actually and had a meeting last week. And so I can't remember numbers specifically, but essentially there was an inventory done in 2015. So we were able to get out in July 2022. We're looking at that we have about the same estimate. So, that report should be done imminently. So we'll be able to share that out with the exact numbers. I just can't recall off the top of my head. For 629, unfortunately, we did actually detect a bit of a decline in the population. So, we've had to adjust, I guess, the license harvesting based on that updated population. But a good news story is mountain goats were in abundance in the park. So we saw 3 times what we had seen previously. So that's a good news story. So there's more work to be done in Tatanchini, I think. That might be a next step too as well after this Carcross project. So. Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah.
Now, from a perspective of Dall sheep range, I guess. 28 and 29 are Dall. Is 27 as well, or is that Fannin?
So I guess technically we're now calling Dall Sheep. Basically that Atlan, like the snowded range, essentially east. So just east of Atlan, if you kind of go McDonald like area, kind of out of Atlan, if you know the area at all, they're basically west. We do consider Dalls, even though technically they might have historically been referred to Fannins. You do have those darker colored Dalls, but genetically we are considering those Dall Sheep in our estimates now. The true Dalls, I guess, have always, not that they're not true Dalls, but how it's been managed has been 628 and 629. But now we're recognizing that boundary has actually expanded.
Okay, cool. And with regards to authorizations in 28, so historically, I think there was around 30 or something in that range, give or take. And then was it one last year, or and what is it this year? I didn't get to see that.
It's one again as well this year. Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So with some inventory work and stuff, do we see any chance of that going and sort of, I guess this cross-border project, is that going to give us any data that would support, sort of harvest levels and that sort of thing?
I hope so. And like I kind of alluded to, part of the reason why we had to reduce that is it's not so much a population estimate at this point. It's just that we did get basically information that the traditional harvest was a lot higher than we had previously accounted for. And so we're kind of in this sort of new world where we're trying to incorporate those values. And so the decision was made to take that value, and that ultimately decrease the authorizations. So we are, kind of working on that to get more information on that. And I think that this project is going to really help, provide information to have that conversation in detail.
So with regards to that, are you guys out actively working with the nation and try and solicit data from them? And obviously, they have the right to protect their data. They don't necessarily have to share that. So do you guys go and look for that and try and work with the nation, or what sort of process goes on there?
Yeah, you bet. And so this is kind of like, this is sort of one of the first rounds that we've been through it. So I guess we've been kind of managed on a 5-year allocation period. So pre-2017, the questions weren't really asked. It wasn't incorporated. So now as government is kind of shifting its focus on reconciliation, there is that higher level of kind of going over all of the consultation for those 5-year periods. So we are absolutely working, and we have a couple more meetings coming up shortly, and trying to get all that information. So it's kind of we're just in an evolution right now. So I guess stay tuned. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Now, I'm curious, one of the things that I've seen a little bit of is, part of the problem with reconciliation is a loss of trust, right? It's particularly First Nations trust around government. And so one thing I hear quite often is like, why would we share our data with you? And I've actually been on Zoom calls where one of the nations said that they'd shared some data with them, and then it showed up in a sporting goods store in Vancouver. And I don't know if that's accurate or not. I have no idea. Maybe it was anecdotal or whatever. But are you finding is building that trust is a challenging thing, or is there a lot of trust? Is there? And I know it's different from nation to nation and community to community, but what's your experience with that, Krystal?
Yeah, I would say it's nation to nation, absolutely. But I think, real relationships go a long ways. And I would say the same would go for, resident hunters. If you're traveling up, like reach out, stop in, drop a case of peaches off if you're going through, through the Okanagan. It's just, I think ultimately we all want to get to a shared kind of landscape. And so it's just getting there. But I would say, a couple of years there, I actually lived in Dease Lake. And I mean, that was one of the best times of my life. And in many ways, I got the opportunity to really get to know some individuals, more, I guess, on a face-to-face level. And I think just time and showing up. And, my motto is like, I will always tell you the truth. You might not like what I have to say. And that might go both ways. But like, I will show up and I will always tell the truth, the best that I know it to be. So right. I think we're getting there. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So let's talk a little bit about this Carcross First Nations and Yeah, I'm going to butcher the name. I'll let you talk about it. But let's talk about that project, this one that the society's been involved in now. Pretty excited about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, high level, we're kind of looking to hopefully get 30 collars out. We haven't ordered them yet. We're just still getting quotes and all that. But the plan is to deploy those in either like kind of February, March, so 2024 timing. That study, essentially, it's going to help us build like I just lost my train of thought there for a second. But so essentially, we're going to be putting out collars on both ewes and rams. Probably those 2 to 3 year. We're still kind of having conversation if we would include a subset of class 4 rams as well, which would be those mature full curl. So that's a data gap that's missing. The Yukon has had some collars out on some Dall sheep, but they've all been unused. So there's kind of a big gap that we all have that we want to know. And that includes mortality, that includes just potential migration routes. So part of that, we're going to be hopefully interviewing some of the elders with the Carcross Tagish First Nation, identifying kind of some of that historic home range use, and then we can see if there's been any changes over time. And then, the other aspect of it is the health sampling. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, Krystal, with that, one of the things that people ask me often is like, okay, you're doing all this study.
Totally.
What is that data? What's it going to be good for? So, sort of, what's our next step? So, this is a 3-year project, if I'm not mistaken,
You bet.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What would our next steps be from that? And I know it's contingent on the data, but where do you see it's going from there after that?
Absolutely. Well, like I mentioned about that herd planning, so supporting that conversation, so do we have sheep that are only in BC, only Yukon? Are they actually true transboundary, like migrating between? So that's just going to help with, just ensuring the best management that we could possibly have for that area. There's a whole bunch of different things that are going to come from it as well. We'll develop an understanding of, natural predation, predator activities. We can monitor and identify potential human-caused impacts. Part of, putting collars on those class 2 to 3 rams as they come up and into that cohort and following that through is some of those will probably become full curl rams. And if they do get harvested, we just get that full picture to know, like, is it compensatory mortality? Is it additive mortality? In some of those areas, I will say that, we have seen an increase in the number of rams under the age of 8. And so that's kind of one of the metrics that we use to consider if population is okay. In the absence of population inventory, when you have both, you can kind of start to get a full picture of incorporating that harvest. But then, working together with the Western science, I guess, and the traditional ecological knowledge to build not only that historic range use, but that current range use, it just starts to give us that whole picture. So, yeah.
In your experience, do you feel that, kind of the 6, 28, 29 are kind of at their carrying capacity? Is there the ability to be more sheep there? I'm just curious on what the feeling is there. Is there an opportunity to grow more sheep?
Yeah, I mean, I like, you look at Tatanchini, we are down. Part of it might, this past year when I was out collaring sheep out of Atlin, we had been in the area 2 years previous. And so, just when you're flying around looking, I'm like, oh, this is a much milder winter. Like, this is going to be better for sheep. And then you get on the ground when you're actually collaring them, you're like, whew, that's some thick ice. And, it wasn't really visible the way it's been visible in other areas. So you run into those sort of habitat limitations where, it might just be a seasonal limitation. And so it's, yeah. So I suspect that if there's no stochastic events, the icing events don't continue, that, yeah, absolutely, there's probably room for an increase in sheep in the area. And that's part of hopefully what we can dive into in a really deep level with this study, as well as the herd planning. For 628, it's pretty rugged. There are some complexes there where you just don't have a lot of sheep. There's quite a few areas that are quite goaty, I would say, not so much sheep habitat. So that one I haven't spent enough time there to really know, but. Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah.
Now for 629, and you said the numbers are down.
Yeah.
Would you say your kind of gut feeling is climate change, ice events, that sort of thing is like, and again, I know that's not hard to say, but that's probably the indicator that's the issue.
Yeah, I mean, that certainly is it. And then, you look kind of to the adjacent jurisdictions like Kluane there, and then heading up into Alaska, and certainly some of those adjacent areas, they're experiencing declines as well. In Tatanchini, there's really only a few complexes that they kind of reside on. And, there are things to consider like winter activity, like there is a snowmobile trail that kind of in the area, as well as there's that kind of that pack raft trail that goes through there. So, I'm hoping, like, for example, the Spatsizi project, where we're essentially going to be looking at hunter and recreational density and how that may influence like range use. So we can learn things from there that might actually be applicable as well for Tatanchini, and that might identify a gap that maybe we want to put some collars out in Tatanchini to help to see like why, what's going on, get the baseline health, because it might be different. But certainly there's some sort of similar things that I think we're going to be able to tease out to support better management. Another thing that I will mention is, unfortunately, it's kind of, you get one of those you get a hunt draw there and you're like, oh my gosh, I got 629. I'm never going to get it again. I got to make this count. So people are spending a lot of time out there. And unfortunately, some folks have made some, poor calls. So we're seeing those illegal rams, kind of a higher proportion there than elsewhere. And those less than 8-year-olds. So that certainly can start to have, a trickle down effect. So, just actually wrapped up the report from that. I'm embarrassed it took so long. I went off on mat leave and it kind of fell through the cracks, but I just passed that off to the Champagne-Ajac First Nations. They were partners with that as well on that survey. And so just waiting for feedback on that, but that will be another survey report that will be done. And at that kind of says, okay, we got to have some management conversations. So, yeah.
Do you envision, does that publicly shared once they get the sign off from the First Nations, then is it going to come to us? You bet. Absolutely. I'll share the reports out. Yeah. Both the 628 and the Tatanchini as soon as they're done. So like, I'm sure you can appreciate, we can't share the point location, but the summaries are absolutely the reports. And then, it's good to carry on the conversation. I'll be looking and I would open up like, send me an email, give me a phone call. This goes out to anybody. Like if you have suggestions or, like we're in these areas on creative management solutions, by all means, I'm all ears, Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Very cool. Okay. Should we talk? What else do we want to talk about? Greg, are we going to hit on any other sheep stuff right now?
Yeah, I was just, when you guys are going in health sampling, is there any specifics you're looking for?
Yeah, there's like a whole array of things. So our we have like a wildlife health department that operates out of Nanaimo there, and they're amazing. They send us they have like protocols basically that they've developed for each species. So they have protocols, they have directions, and then they send us a sampling kit. So it's foolproof. but essentially we're doing everything from taking blood to test for pregnancy and use. We're taking a biopsy for genetics. We're taking a hide sample, which can also be used for genetics, or cortisol. We're taking pellets, same thing. And we're taking tonsil swabs, nasal swabs. So the main thing we're basically looking for usually is respiratory diseases. So the big one being Mycoplasma pneumoniae. Other ones, toxoplasma, things like that. We're doing a whole suite, and then also like parasite toxicology, things like that. There's a whole array of things that we do. So.
When you're dealing with the dolls, is there any disease concern at the moment, or is it just the health sampling, just so you know?
Yeah, just so we know. So there has been some Amovi in Alaska reported, so we certainly want to detect if there's any of that. Just it helps us to know their vulnerability for mortality. Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
So with the capture, Krystal, is it going to be both sides of the border, or and if you can't get any details, that's cool too. But just wondering where you guys will be capturing. Totally, yeah. So I haven't been able to connect with Yukon. We're going to be having some planning meetings in the short order there, just in the field. Then I head to the field, and we're hoping to. I'm actually have a call on Thursday with the wildlife veterinarian in the Yukon. So we're going to have just a preliminary meeting with her, hoping to meet with the rest of like Kyle Russell and her and Jaylee Groots as well. She's involved in the project as a Yukon biologist to kind of do the planning, but hoping to focus around the border, a bit on each kind of, and then also if the Carcross Tagish have identified any important areas once we sit down and chat with them a bit more as well, but mainly focusing on that cross boundary area. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, some nations are very advanced. They have a whole team of dedicated professionals. Is Tagish Carcross in that same sort of boat? Are they pretty advanced, or where do they sit in terms of being able to support you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. They have a pretty small, a small office there, but they have like a tremendous lands department. So they've got cultural heritage managers, they've got lands coordinators, they have a few land guardians as well, both full-time and I think auxiliary that come on, I believe, but yeah, so there's probably four individuals that can probably be involved. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a break and talk a little bit about sheep hunting. So you talked about your first few hunts, and you talked about shooting a bear and being on the deer hunt, but I got to see during the summit, I seen your stone sheep, and it was absolutely a beautiful ram. Yeah. And it was on the middle of, like, on a massive peak in the middle of obviously stone sheep terrain. So let's hear a little bit about that story and sort of, was it, I guess maybe, where did this vision of going on a sheep hunt come from? Was it like as a young girl when you first kind of went out, or is it sort of evolved as you got into the hunt space?
Yeah. Well, I think when, like I say, when I was 18 and I was on the walk past trail and finding that ram head, I was like, okay. So that's kind of, I think, where it first started. I think it seems so unattainable, to be totally honest. Like, how do you get into that? It seems so elite. And then, I guess I just slowly built the confidence and decided I want to mountain hunt. Like, that's what I want to do. And so I started with a goat hunt and, put in a few trips for that, and thankfully was successful. And that was the hardest hunt of my entire life. If I'm completely honest, I questioned if I even liked it when we were packing that goat out. It was just insanely like this, but it was a good experience. And then I really wanted to, really wanted to sheep hunt, to be honest. So I kind of actually had plans to go out one year, and I decided that I thought it would be cool to take horse riding lessons, and fell off and I couldn't walk. So I had to miss my very first sheep hunt. And so that was pretty heartbreaking. But then just kind of kept trying. Went out for a couple more trips unsuccessfully, saw lots of sheep, even actually had the opportunity to glass other people, kind of across different hills, take sheep. That was pretty cool. And then I guess the summer I got my sheep, I actually went out pre-season on a ladies only hunt. So we went and did this trip together. So we were out there, we went in a couple days early, saw some sheep, nothing legal. And so it was time to leave there. And I happened to come out, and my husband and good friend Craig were heading in on their hunt. And I think they were excited that I was so keen. And they're like, well, why don't you just come on our hunt? And I was like, well, I don't want to crash it, but they were insistent. So went out with them, and it was a pretty good grunt. It was probably about, when we figured it out, it was about probably 50-kilometer hike off the highway. So it was a good trek. And kind of, I think it was day 3 or something like that. The smoke blew in. There was big fires that year, and I was like, oh, we might as well just hike out. There's a game over. You can't see anything. And it was kind of heartbreaking, but then waited it out the next day. I think we woke up at like 3:30 in the morning. We got into the spot we wanted to, and then we kind of saw some sheep coming up over the horizon. It's like, oh, okay. So we tucked into these rocks and just watched this kind of go off, and everyone kept getting bigger and bigger, but then it kind of stopped, and it wasn't one that was a shooter. So it was like, okay, well that's okay. But it was incredible just to watch them. They kind of surrounded all around us. They were eating, the grass, and just what an experience. And then they kind of moved on, went up the mountain, kind of kept going on, and then we kind of just carried trailing on a little bit more, and just poked our nose over the spot. And then, there were the big boys. They were all hanging out together. So then the question became, okay, who, do we do a double header? How far back are we? That kind of conversation started happening, and the boys were insistent that it was my shot. It had been a spot that I had been, in a couple trips previously, and I had shared some information with them from my boots on the ground there. And so they were adamant that I took the shot. So the way it was bedded down kind of just wasn't super ideal. So just got in position and just stayed steady, until it stood up, kind of after scanning. There was multiple ones that would have been legal in that group, but I had my eyes set on this one. So just kind of waited, and everything in me sort of started to fall asleep as you're like in this awkward position on this rock. And then it stood up and took the shot. And that was that. It was, what an experience. Yeah.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
So did Dan or Craig, they didn't want to try and get another one, or
There was
guys?
there was a conversation, like, and then we thought, oh, we're way too far back. So ended up
Right.
passing on that. Then the group went, and funny enough, actually on our hike out, like, so we were one day in, and so if that makes sense. So one day closer to where the truck was parked, there was another one, and Craig and I were, we just wanted a second look. It wasn't super obvious. It's like that would be we're both regional biologists, and that would be very awkward to oops, didn't want to do that. But it's one of those things, like if we would have had another 2 seconds, we would have made the decision probably too.
Right.
But we'll let that one went as well. So yeah, we all happily, I guess, shared the ram, carried a third out each, and it was pleasant. It was doable, so it was good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it for sure.
Yeah.
Has your husband, was he successful on the sheep hunt prior to going out with you guys?
Not yet. Still holding out for him. So I'm, like I say, I just love the country. I love purposely wandering. Like we've done a couple like camera trips, like pre-season, like our first date was like a 5-day sheep camera trip. We just went up on Tottigan and hiked around and watched and glassed, and it was incredible. So I'm looking forward to getting out. I don't need to be the one to pull the trigger. I'm just super happy to be there with people. So fingers crossed we'll get him one. So yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, it's pretty kind of him to let you take the shot too.
I know. I still feel humbled. It's not my sheep; it's our sheep. That's what I say. But yeah, I was just the one to pull the trigger. But we worked hard and worked well as a team. So yeah.
Cool.
And got lucky.
Any idea how much your yeah, that's always a good thing. Do you know what did your pack weigh coming out? Would you guess?
I'm guessing it was probably 80-ish. Like it wasn't too bad. Actually, like I think it was a week or two later, my husband and I were on a caribou hunt, and we got a caribou, and I thought I was humbled. I thought for sure I could pack the caribou off, and so I was like, oh yeah, throw the hide on, I'm fine, and took 3 steps, and I cannot breathe. So
nope.
Yeah, that was 2 trips. So I was humbled. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, would you say that you as a regional biologist are better at your job because you're a sheep hunter? Are there things that you've learned being in the field as a hunter that have helped you do your job?
Yeah, I think it just gives you an intimate, understanding watching wildlife. I don't think there's no better way to learn about it. It gives you a different perspective, because if you think about it as a biologist, like our field work is helicopter work. We're up high. You're getting that big picture. You don't get that intimate relationship that you get when you're boots on the ground, for an area. Like there's nothing like boots on the ground, spending time watching wildlife. And I think too, it just, and I'm not saying that non-hunters don't care about wildlife persisting. Like absolutely they do, but it's just, it's just, you really want wildlife to persist in abundance. And I think when you're a hunter and invested in that, it becomes you live and breathe it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Region 6 is huge. Is it the biggest region, like physically, or is 7B compete with it? I'm just curious, geographically.
I think we are the biggest region. We're basically like a third of the province. So it's, it takes me 2-day drive to get up to Atlin, really. Like it's in the winter anyhow. It's a 14-hour drive from Smithers here. So yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with regards to your region, what would you say some of the bigger challenges for sheep right now that you kind of feel would be the biggest thing we need to deal with?
Yeah, absolutely. I think climate change, that those icing events they can just be absolutely devastating. And, they're very naive from a disease perspective. So just ensuring that we don't, have that interaction of disease come in, that's critical. So those are probably the 2 major things. I mean, there's obviously some other areas where, we're just starting to detect, there's just probably too much harvest pressure in certain areas. So might have to start to have consideration on what that might look like elsewhere. So there's certainly more specifics, at a kind of more local area. We have areas where we have super high eagle densities, and that obviously has a pretty big impact on lamb recruitment and things like that. Yeah.
So I hear this a lot, and I hear it from Bill all the time, actually, too, right? That eagles are killers of wild sheep and goats, too. They get hammered pretty hard.
Yeah.
Is this mostly anecdotal, or do you guys study this? Do you guys see it? Like, how does it, is it talking to First Nations? Like, what's the experience there? Are you finding eagles on sheep? How do you guys, where's that coming from, I guess?
Yeah, so a bit of both. I've been on a survey and there was an eagle sitting on 2 fresh lamb kills, like 2. You're like, really? And so just observation that way. And then the other thing through some of the research projects that we have, the collaring, there's been mortality investigations. So, essentially the collar goes on mortality. You try to get there as quickly as you can. And through that, it's almost like a necropsy, a bit of an investigation on what was the cause of mortality. So through that, we're able to tell, did it just die of disease? Was it just being like ate incidentally by an eagle, or was it actually like an eagle predation? So yeah, so we're starting to get a bit of that actual hard data.
So, and I guess these projects, so the Spatsizi collaring project, obviously the cross-border project with the Yukon, that's going to give you that data. You will, and my understanding, I've seen the project report or the project prospectus, and it looks like there's a bunch of money in there for mortality investigation, right? So you guys get a caller, you're going to get out there as soon as you can and try and investigate it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's going to probably, and again, we're still in the planning stages, working out those hard details with the Yukon, but proximity, they're much closer. So that'll be the land guardians from Carcross Tagish First Nations working with the Yukon Biles. It's just much quicker for them to hop in the machine and get down to the study area, unless we're already in the area. So yeah, absolutely. That's going to be a huge priority to try to get out as soon as we can on those mortalities. Yeah.
And with a trans-border project like this, cross-border project, are there any jurisdictional issues? Or is it, if both sides are on board, it's not that big a deal? It's pretty straightforward. Yeah,
pretty straightforward. You got to do 2 animal care applications, 2 permit applications, things like that. But I mean, when you're doing one, it's no worries. But working together on those things, like I've got a call this week with the vet and just kind of making sure we get whatever both jurisdictions need, and then it should be no worries at all. Mm-hmm.
So with a project like this, is there like a boilerplate where it's like, okay, there's these things have to happen, or is it like, you're just putting it together, you're kind of envisioning what needs to be done, and obviously there's some things like the permits, all that, of course, that needs to be done, so that's pretty straightforward. But a lot of the stuff, do you call up somebody and say, oh, just give me a plan for a collaring project? How does that work?
No, we pretty much write the recipe. A lot of us have been involved in a lot of other projects. Myself with goat work, some goat projects supporting the Tacker River Tlingit. So it's kind of like similar things that you need to do. The health sampling, getting the collar on, and then it's what you do with the data after. And often we're working with academia because as you can appreciate, a lot of us don't have a ton of time to dive in deep. And so, bringing a master students on board, things like that, you just get those really detailed analysis that we might not have time for. So it's just kind of looking for opportunity to get more out of the information you're getting. Because, from a management perspective, it's pretty high level. But all that extra research just gives you those extra things that ultimately lead to better management. So, yeah.
So we've seen a little bit of that on some of the other projects we've been involved in. Is that going to be the case? I don't think this first year you have a master student plan, but are you planning one down the road?
I think so. And that's part of the conversation that, we'll have with the Yukon. But yeah, I kind of reached out to Bill Jex on this because he's kind of helped support and mentor a lot of students. And we're onboarding a student this January, they're starting with a Spatsizi. And I'm like, wouldn't this be great if we could get another student in that lab to have 2 folks. There's a bit of overlap in the analysis, and so there could be efficiencies there. So what I would like, my wish list would be to onboard a student for next year. So, yeah.
It's pretty cool. And actually, when I think about it, I think there's a lot of students out there, master students, that are doing this work right now for sheep, and not necessarily all in BC. Some of them, it's the territories, Sydney Goward, for example. But there's a lot of different work that's being done for wild sheep at the academia level.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you work at all with Adam Ford out of UBC Okanagan? Are you familiar with Dr. Ford at all?
I haven't worked with him, no. I've certainly heard his name, but we've never worked together yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's reached out and he's said like we should have a sheep, a chair, effectively, a doctorate, I guess. I'm butchering it a bit here. And I was like, yeah, it's a great idea. But then he told me the price tag, and then I had to reevaluate that because it's to have an endowed chair for wildlife and for sheep specifically, it was not cheap.
I bet. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So magic wand for Region 6. If you could solve any problem, you could fix any herd. What is Krystal Kriss going to fix tomorrow? She's going to call God and say, fix this problem, and it's going to sort all your woes out. What's that?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Well, that would be certainly, obviously, I think no Mycoplasma ovinemoniae entering Skeena region at all, ever. That would make me very happy. And if I could wave a magic wand and stop the icing events so that there's good groceries out there for easily accessible groceries for the sheep, that would make me very happy as well. Those would be my two top things, I guess, but I could probably go on forever.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, just out of curiosity, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there has been a disease event in Region 6 in sheep for Mycoplasma ovinemoniae. Is that correct?
No, we did have a potential positive or a suspect one that came out. Gosh, I want to say this was 2020 or 2021. So I actually think the Wild Sheep Society of BC had funded that at that time, but there was a whole bunch. So that kind of came from that 620. So that would be the Tottigan herd kind of area. So they were able, so Dr. Kylie Thacker and the Tall Tan Guardians actually went out, and I was supposed to be there, but there was the highway was shut down, so it didn't make it. So they ended up doing a whole bunch of swabs, and everything came back negative. So no, nothing so far, which is great. We've had a few other, things come up. Some of the, Toxoplasma, Pastorella, things like that, but no MOVI. Mm-hmm.
Is there any domestic producers in the Skeena region?
Gosh, there's a couple little hobby farms here and there, like in Atlin. I can think of a couple with a few, but no, not the same way that other regions deal with that. Yeah, just small little hobby farms with goat and sheep, kind of locally. Mm-hmm.
Cool. One thing I want to ask you is, what can we, if we're out in hunting sheep in Region 6 or just recreating, whatever the case may be, what can we do to help you do your job? And if we see something, if we're concerned, what should we do and who do we call?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, obviously the sheep and goat app is tremendous, for entering in that. But I tremendously appreciate when folks take the time to give me a report after, like, hey, I spent 5 days out. I saw X amount of ewes and lambs, and just like general sense, like, what are you seeing out there? Because boots on the ground, like I say, it gives you a different perspective, a different, just a completely different perspective, which is very beneficial. And the other thing is anything abnormal, like diseases, like, if you're seeing contagious ectothymia, like, or for anything like that, we have had incidents of that out there. So I would say, like, well, when I was out flying the Tatanchini, we've ended up flying over a goat that was just dead. Like, everything seemed completely fine with it, but what's going on? So just maybe, waypoints and photos, things like that. Anything kind of abnormal. Little notes like that are so helpful.
Cool.
Yeah.
And that sheep and goat app and I think you guys Bill was involved with that. Region 6 was involved with developing that. That works for the entire province. You can use it for sheep anywhere and goats anywhere in the province.
It is great because one thing I'll say is we lack a lot of inventory for basically most of our region, apart from a few little areas. So, all of that information is just, it just helps to build the full picture of what's going on, right? Yeah.
How does that work with regards to confidence? If you get sort of a hunter reported, number and it completely contradicts everything that you have, what's your confidence level in it, and do you use that?
So I would say, like, obviously we can't take one piece of information. It's just the same as, like, an inventory is one snapshot in time. Like, it's just one snapshot. And so it's that trend data you're looking for. It's just, it's starting to tell that story, and it's part of that story. And so if you're getting, conflicting information, it's like, okay, well, maybe that prioritizes an area for an inventory ahead of another or things like that. So, like I say, it's just part of figuring out the story, what's going on out there.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I think that's what I have for questions for you. Greg, you got anything left for Krystal that you want to hit on?
No, I think covered most of it. It's a little learning experience for me here. I'm not very familiar with Skeena area, so I've only been there a couple times.
It's not that nice. Don't tell your friends.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we'd love to have you back on. And you know what would be really cool is right after you do your capture this winter, and when you get some downtime, it'd be really fun to chat with you and some of the things you're seeing on the landscape and what it was like to be on that. And we're really hopeful that you'll be able to share some of the stories from that and some of the pictures, because that's just, as you know, one of our members, Ben Barakoff, owns Canadian Wildlife Capture. He heard about the project. He's like, how can I get involved with that? There's just so much interest in this, and it's really, really exciting.
Yeah, I've had the pleasure of working with him before, so I'm looking forward to hopefully working with him again. So yeah, that's awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Now, one last question for you, and this is honestly the most important one. Are you sheep hunting this fall or what?
I'm not. No, unfortunately, my son's daycare closes for 2 weeks, so I got to use my holiday time to hang out with him, which is awesome. But I'm hoping next year. So, yep.
How about your husband? Is he going?
I'm hoping so. I'm hoping Grandma and Grandpa want to hang out with some cute little kids, and we can get out. One thing I'll just quickly say is I got in that car accident just before we got married, a month before, and our honeymoon was supposed to be a sheep hunt, and it was heartbreaking. I couldn't do it because I couldn't wear my pack because my back was all messed up. So unfortunately, but time heals, and keep working on it, and hopefully we'll get out there next year and become
right on.
Coming up.
I heard if you call into work sick, sheep hunting's the perfect cure.
Yeah,
So.
there you go. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Krystal. Appreciate all you do for Wild Sheep, and just look forward to the great work you're doing, and look forward to hearing lots about the great projects you guys are doing in Region 6 this winter. Yeah,
likewise, and thank you tremendously for your support. I'm so honored to be a part of the work, and you guys, wow, you're making it happen. So thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Awesome.